The grand assembly of the 9 systems had never been quiet. Not once in the 200 cycles since its founding had there been a single moment without the rumble of alien voices, the clang of mech armor against stone, or the soft chimes of translators trying to make sense of dozens of languages at once. But now, as the human delegation stood up, straightened their dark blue uniforms, and began walking toward the exit doors, the entire chamber fell into stunned, breathless silence. Ambassador Keller didn't look back. Neither did her team. Their faces were unreadable, but every movement they made was heavy. Every step an earthquake across centuries of galactic diplomacy. "They're actually doing it," whispered an avian diplomat near the far right. "The humans are leaving." No one moved to stop them. Not even the Zarthan warlords, known for their arrogance and volume, dared to speak. The assembly's towering dome, once a symbol of unity, felt suddenly like a coffin. Keller's heels echoed against the polished obsidian floor. She could feel the stares, the silent panic blooming in every representative's mind. It wasn't just political posturing. It wasn't another warning. Humanity was done. They had warned them. Over and over, for decades, the humans had begged the Assembly to act against the exploitation of frontier worlds, those lawless trade routes where pirates and private military fleets ravaged colonies without consequence. Dozens of human settlements had fallen, and the Assembly had turned its eyes away each time. Too distant, not under direct jurisdiction. Complicated, they'd say. But it wasn't just the violence. It was the way they spoke about humans. The way the Elderly Prime once laughed openly during a session and said, "Humans are loud, emotional primitives. They breed fast, die young, and scream when the stars burn them." The way the Assembly applauded. And the way no one stood when Earth sent its final plea last week, the massacre on Vega 9, where over 30,000 human lives were lost to a Zarthan-backed syndicate. There was video, there was proof, there was blood, and the Assembly voted, again, to observe and wait. They had underestimated humanity's patience. The last thing the galaxy expected was silence, because when humans are angry, they talk, but when they are done, they walk away. And now, they were done. As Keller reached the great exit doors, the High Speaker finally rose from his obsidian throne. Ambassador Keller, his voice trembled, layered with synthetic grace. "This Assembly must protest your—" She stopped, turned slowly, and faced the entire hall. Her eyes scanned the aliens, some towering, some insectoid, some shimmering with bioluminescent pulses. Every species from every quadrant stared back at her like she was holding the sun in her hands. "You've made it clear," she said, voice steady, "that human lives mean nothing here, that our pain is inconvenient, our blood, a minor trade disruption." A few tried to shift in their seats, but no one interrupted. "Well then," she continued, "let's make this easy for everyone." She pulled a data crystal from her sleeve and held it in the air. "As of this moment, humanity officially withdraws from the Galactic Assembly. All diplomatic ties are severed. All trade, all technology sharing, all defense pacts terminated." The hall erupted into chaos. Shouts. Screeches. Voices demanded she retract. Others tried to reason, but the humans didn't wait. They walked through the doors, and for the first time in centuries, the galaxy saw something it never expected. Fear. Not fear of war, nor invasion, but fear of absence. Because humanity had always been a double-edged sword, brilliant and unpredictable, stubborn and relentless. They had built and destroyed in equal measure. They had brought fire and medicine to the stars. And now, they were gone. Back on Earth, a new directive was already being activated. The gates were closing. The diplomats were returning. And deep beneath the surface, In old vaults sealed by presidents and generals long dead, something ancient stirred awake. The galaxy had called humanity emotional, impulsive, reckless. But they had forgotten one thing: humanity remembers. The flight back to Earth was wordless. Ambassador Keller sat in the command pod of the diplomatic cruiser, eyes fixed on the black stretch of stars outside the viewport. The rest of her team sat behind her, stiff, silent, thinking the same thing she was. No one asked if they'd done the right thing, because right or wrong didn't matter anymore. Humanity had begged, bargained, tolerated every insult, every denial, every twisted justification from that so-called galactic unity. But there was no unity in letting billions suffer while empires drank wine made from their ashes. Keller clenched her jaw as the Earth-Mars relay came into range. Her fingers hovered over the console before opening a priority channel. Diplomatic Cruiser 01 to Home Command. Confirm withdrawal complete. There was a pause. Then a response. Sharp, male, clipped. This is Home Command. Confirmation acknowledged. The Assembly has been notified of humanity's full withdrawal. All channels have gone dark. Welcome home, Ambassador. Keller didn't answer right away, because home felt different now. It wasn't just Earth. It was every moon, every colony, every ship with a beating human heart inside. And now, they stood alone. But there was power in that too. Back in the Assembly, they'd seen it. That moment when the doors shut behind the last diplomat, and silence devoured the chamber like a black hole. The aliens knew what humanity walking away truly meant. It meant no more warning shots, no more shared technology, no more restraints, because the only thing more dangerous than a desperate species is a species that no longer cares what anyone thinks. The next day, across every human colony and station, a single broadcast interrupted regular communication. Effective immediately, humanity has disengaged from all galactic diplomatic obligations. Our territory is now closed. No alien vessels are permitted within human space without explicit invitation. Violators will not be warned twice. The voice delivering it wasn't Keller's. It belonged to a man few had seen in person, but all knew by name: Chancellor Rourke. Elected by emergency vote only weeks before, after Vega 9 became a mass grave. Rourke had made his career in shadows: former intelligence chief, former Black Ops handler, and rumored architect of the controversial Zero Protocols. Now he was the most powerful man in human history, and he was tired of playing nice. 2 weeks later, the galaxy was still adjusting. Dozens of trade stations, once full of human-engineered systems, now sat offline. Merchant guilds were scrambling to find replacements for Terran reactors, ship hulls, and faster-than-light jump drives, all once distributed through diplomatic goodwill. But goodwill had a cost, and humanity had always footed the bill, quietly and without complaint. Now that goodwill had evaporated, the pain came quickly. Pirates in the unregulated sectors celebrated first. With no humans to monitor border zones, they assumed it was open season on abandoned colonies and drifting outposts. That illusion lasted about 6 days. In the fourth quadrant of neutral space, a Zarthan warband attacked what they believed was a derelict human refueling station, Station Orpheus 6. It wasn't even armed. A skeleton crew, 4 technicians, 1 AI. They expected no resistance. Instead, they triggered a countermeasure that had never been used before. Project Hades. No warning, no countdown, no broadcast, just silence. Then, 30 seconds later, the warband's 3 frigates were turned into molten debris. It wasn't a nuke. It wasn't even a weapon known to the rest of the galaxy. The only signal the Assembly received was a single ping, auto-transmitted to every ambassador who'd once mocked humanity. Retaliation response, Autonomous Defense. AI Z032 Hades activated under isolation protocol. Target eliminated. No further warnings will be issued. It wasn't the destruction that scared them. It was the message. No further warnings. Ambassador Keller returned to Earth quietly. There were no cameras, no press, just a dark car and a quiet ride through the underground tunnels beneath Geneva. She wasn't going home. There was no time for that. Instead, she was brought to Facility Blackridge, a place that officially didn't exist. Located 5 miles beneath the Alps, it had been built decades earlier, at the dawn of Earth's interstellar age. A place of last resort planning, war simulations, deep vaults of banned technology. And in the lowest level, behind sealed titanium doors, lay a table where 5 people now sat. The Council of Silence. A private committee formed only in times of complete breakdown. Each one carried emergency override codes. One was a general, one a scientist, one an economist, one an intelligence spy master. And now, the 5th seat was filled. Keller. "You understand why you're here," said General Moss, a scarred woman with silver hair and one artificial eye. Keller nodded once. "We're not going back." "No," the scientist, Dr. Elian Voss, said, folding his hands. "But we also need to decide what forward looks like." The economist leaned forward. "They'll collapse without us. Trade, medical systems, starship components. 70% of their systems rely on human tech in some form. We created a network they can't replace." "Should we let them collapse?" asked Moss, voice hard. The question hung in the air. Keller finally answered. "Yes. Let them feel it. Let them choke on their own arrogance." The room didn't argue, because none of them had forgotten Vega 9, or the laughter of the Eldari Prime, or the way those aliens talked about humans like they were insects, useful only when obedient. But humans had never been good at obedience. Now they were going to remind the galaxy why. On the outer rim of Terran space, something else was happening. A secret fleet was being built, the Revenant Armada. No flags, no diplomatic markings, no registry, just black ships with no lights, no signals, no known origins. Each one designed in silence, forged with forbidden tech the Assembly had tried to regulate. Neutron displacement cannons, temporal mines, stealth fields that turned entire cruisers invisible to even advanced sensors. And most terrifying of all, crew members who volunteered for neural link combat. Human pilots whose minds were wired directly into their ships. The Assembly had outlawed it decades ago. Humanity just didn't care anymore. They had built everything by the book, followed every galactic protocol, sat at every table, signed every treaty, and when they were slaughtered and ignored, no one came. So now, no more treaties, no more tables, just war, or the threat of it. Because the worst part? Humanity hadn't declared war. They hadn't threatened anyone. They just left. And the galaxy had no idea what they were planning, which made them far more dangerous than any known empire. In the diplomatic halls of the Eldari homeworld, chaos brewed. Ambassadors demanded answers. Trade councils begged for human contact. Analysts worked overtime trying to guess Earth's next move. A young Eldari scholar, curious and bold, managed to sneak into an abandoned human embassy just days after the withdrawal. What she found was chilling. Every system had been wiped, every file deleted. Except one. A single display screen was left active, with an ancient Terran phrase looping in 26 languages. When the lamb leaves the field, the wolves think it's gone. But sometimes the lamb leaves, because it learned how to kill. The scholar left shaking. The galaxy had always treated humans like children, emotional, violent, unstable, yet somehow tolerable because of their creativity and passion. But now the children had walked away, and they'd taken their toys with them. On Earth, Chancellor Rourke stood before the Unified Defense Command. Behind him, holograms of 100 human ships hovered in the air, each marked active. "We are not declaring war," he said calmly, his voice steady, "but we are preparing for one." He turned to the Council. "For too long, we played by rules written by empires who never wanted us to thrive. They wanted humanity useful, but never equal. That ends today." One general raised a hand. "What happens if they beg us to return?" Rourke's lips curved into a cold smile. "Let them." In the shadows between stars, alien fleets repositioned, borders tightened, surveillance increased, because for the first time in 100 years, the galaxy didn't know what the humans were thinking, and that, more than anything else, terrified them. It began with a whisper in the void. One of the oldest smuggler routes, Sector Thal 9, had gone dark. No ships, no signals, no survivors. A routine Eldari freight convoy, carrying crystal core fuel cells, had vanished without a single distress ping. 4 freighters, 2 escort ships, gone. No one knew what had happened. The galaxy told itself it was pirates again, or maybe a solar flare. But deep down, the ones who paid attention, the ones who remembered what Earth was capable of, they knew better. This was a message, a very human one, not loud, not boastful, but cold, deliberate, and precise. They weren't just walking away, they were watching now, and waiting. The Eldari Council of Flame, embarrassed and increasingly nervous, sent a private envoy to Earth. It wasn't a peace gesture, not really. They didn't apologize. They didn't acknowledge the Vega 9 massacre. They simply asked for a structured dialogue to resume favorable trade terms. In other words, let us buy your tech again. Let us profit from you again. Just don't make us say sorry. Earth never responded. 3 days later, the envoy's return ship was found drifting just outside Terran-controlled space. Intact. Life support running. Crew unconscious but unharmed. All systems were untouched, except one. A single word had been burned into the ship's primary console in Terran Standard. No. The message was clear. There would be no more polite conversations. No quiet deals behind closed doors. No compromise. And the galaxy was running out of time to realize it. Inside Blackridge facility, Ambassador Keller stood alone in Observation Room B. Beyond the one-way glass was something the rest of the galaxy would have called insane. It was Project Juno. A human being, or at least what had once been one, floated inside a reinforced neurogel chamber. Tubes ran into her spine. Her skull had been surgically opened and sealed again with layers of quantum-linked neural mesh. Her eyes never closed. She didn't blink. Her name was Ava Lynn, former pilot, volunteer, now a living part of the war machine. She had volunteered for the Neural Integration Program just days after the assembly laughed off the Vega 9 footage. She had watched it happen, watched the colony burn, helpless from orbit, while the assembly issued another statement about further investigation. Ava didn't cry. She simply signed the form and went under the knife. Now her mind was a ship, one of the Revenant-class destroyers. She didn't just fly it. She was it. Her heartbeat regulated the engine's core temperature. Her emotions influenced shield modulation. And when she wanted a target dead, the AI inside didn't question it. She didn't speak anymore. Not with words. But her thoughts echoed in the chamber through pulses in the air, soundless to most. Keller pressed a hand to the glass. "We made them do this," she thought bitterly. "They forced us into becoming what they feared the most." Behind her, Dr. Elian Voss entered, holding a data slate. "She's stable," he said. "Her performance is staggering. Precision, speed, reaction time. We've never seen anything like it." Keller nodded slowly. And the risk? Voss hesitated. She doesn't sleep, doesn't rest. Her brain is adapting too well. We're seeing synaptic growth in areas that should have degraded. Frankly, we're not sure she's human anymore. Not fully. Keller didn't flinch. Does she want out? No, Voss replied. In fact, she's requesting more integration. She wants full authority over her strike team. She'll get it. And just like that, the decision was made. The galaxy thought humanity was done because it left the assembly. But Earth wasn't retreating. Earth was evolving. Across human space, construction surged. Colonies that once depended on assembly guidelines were now rewriting their own laws. Without alien oversight, Mars legalized and weaponized quantum phase matter. Luna opened old bunkers and reactivated defunct orbital cannon systems. The asteroid cities of the belt, long ignored and underfunded, now became shipyard havens for stealth cruisers and experimental drives. Earth was no longer interested in being part of someone else's order. They were building their own future. And it didn't involve begging anyone to be treated as equals. In the quiet depths of the Rilgar Drift, far from any official star charts, a mining vessel picked up an unknown contact. It was a human probe. That alone wasn't strange. But what was strange was the message it carried, endlessly repeating in open code. It said, "You laughed while we bled. You watched while we burned. Now you'll wonder where we are, and what we're planning." The probe self-destructed after transmitting. The message reached 5 different sectors within the week. No claim of war, no declaration of hostility, just that voice, that terrible, calm human voice, and it echoed in every council chamber, every war room, every corner of the galaxy that had once mocked Earth's place in the stars. In a dark chamber aboard a Zarthan warship, Supreme Strategist Jalek of the Crimson Crest convened with his inner circle. They had supplied the weapons that killed Vega 9. They had trained the syndicates. It had been a calculated move. Bleed human frontier colonies, keep them weak, keep them desperate. The Assembly had looked the other way, and Earth hadn't retaliated. Until now. Jalek growled, slamming his clawed hand into the console. "We should have crushed them when we had the chance, before they spread like parasites." "Now?" one of his advisors asked. Jalek's eyes narrowed. "Now, we provoke them. We test them." 3 Zarthan scout cruisers were dispatched to probe Terran space, just past the Kepler threshold. A minor violation, no real threat. They never returned. 2 were found weeks later, drifting in perfect condition. Every crew member was missing. No damage, no signs of struggle, just empty. The 3rd was never found at all. Inside the command bridge of the lead cruiser, investigators found one thing etched onto the main viewing glass. 3 words: "Try us again." On Earth, Chancellor Rourke stood before a new division of the Terran Guard. No uniforms, no medals, just sleek black armor with no insignia. Each soldier had been selected, trained, and augmented beyond conventional standards. They were nameless. No IDs, no ranks, just a purpose. He called them the Ghost Directive. Their mission was simple: preemptive neutralization of any external threat to humanity's survival. No debates, no votes, no assembly. "You are the answer to every insult we've endured," Rourke said, voice low. "You are what happens when Earth no longer apologizes for existing." They didn't salute. They simply nodded. Somewhere in deep space, an Assembly War Council finally gathered in secret. A dozen empires, centuries of combined power, and for the first time in recorded history, they met not to talk about trade or law, but about one species, humanity. "We must re-establish diplomacy," the Eldari insisted. We must restore balance." "The balance ended when we let them burn," a reptilian envoy snarled. "You think they'll forgive? Look at them. They've disappeared behind their own borders." "They're building something." "What if we act first?" asked another. "Strike before they can." But the room grew quiet at that suggestion, because no one was sure what Earth had built since it went dark. No one knew. And attacking them now? It might be the last mistake the galaxy ever made. Back on Earth, in a quiet room beneath Mount Asgard, Ava Lynn pulsed within her chamber. Her thoughts were sharper now. She no longer remembered what fear felt like. Instead, she was running simulations, thousands, every possible outcome of an intergalactic strike against humanity. She won in 96% of them. The other 4%? She was still learning. For the first time in recorded galactic history, no human ship was seen outside Terran borders for a full 30 days. No scouts, no traders, no diplomats. It was as if Earth had vanished from the galaxy. But then, on the 31st day, a single Terran freighter appeared at a neutral fueling station in Sector 7E. The ship's AI requested refueling, paid in full using outdated credits, and politely declined any contact. The station manager, a four-eyed Sothari named Briel, asked the AI before it left, "Why now? Why break the silence?" The AI paused, then answered, "Silence is a message, but so is a whisper." Then it jumped away. Briel didn't sleep for 3 days after that, because he knew humanity wasn't done. They were just getting started. It started with one ship. A small, unmarked corvette appeared above the skies of Karthos Prime, a mid-tier assembly world known more for bureaucrats and paperwork than anything strategic. It entered orbit without clearance, broadcasting no transponder ID, no species affiliation, no warning. The Karthos defense grid activated instantly. 12 atmospheric cannons locked on. 6 orbital satellites ran full scans. Within minutes, the assembly had issued a priority red code. The ship was Terran in design. But before the first drone could even move, the corvette transmitted one line on open frequency. "We are here for what's ours." Then it moved. It didn't fire a single shot. It didn't need to. Within 90 seconds, it bypassed every defense measure, jamming comms, disabling orbitals, scrambling surface radars, until the Karthos Military Command Center lost all contact with the sky. People screamed, systems collapsed, and then, as fast as it arrived, the ship was gone. Vanished, no casualties, no destruction, but in the wake of its intrusion, one thing was discovered missing. A vault, specifically, a Terran biotech archive, confiscated illegally by the Assembly 50 years ago and quietly stored on Karthos Prime. The galaxy had forgotten it. Earth hadn't, and now they had taken it back, without asking, without apologizing. The Assembly tried to play it off. A technical malfunction, they said. False identification. No proof the vessel was of human origin. But everyone knew. This wasn't about war. This was about reclaiming. And humans never forgot what was taken from them. Back on Earth, Keller sat in a small room in the Geneva Arcology, alone except for the whispering static of her personal transmitter. The world was changing faster than anyone imagined. The former ambassador now served as Earth's top strategist under the Silent Accord, a new Terran initiative operating beneath all civilian channels. There were no public addresses, no press releases, no speeches, just action. Keller had always been a diplomat, a speaker, a believer in words and bridges, but she had also been a student of history, and history had proven one thing over and over again. No one respects peace until they remember what war looks like. The door hissed open behind her. Rourke stepped in. No guards, no aides, just the man who now ruled humanity without question. Keller looked up, expression unreadable. "You sent Ava to Carthos?" "She volunteered," Rourke said simply, sitting across from her. "It was a recovery mission. No harm done." "You could have sent a formal request," Keller replied. "Prove we're not the monsters they think we are." Rourke's eyes darkened. "They already think we are. They always did. The only difference is now, we don't care." She didn't argue, because deep down she knew he was right. In orbit around Jupiter's second moon, an experimental Terran ship awaited activation. The Obsidian Dagger. Unlike any vessel before it, this was not built to fight on the terms of conventional war. It was built to end war. It could slip into dark space, where physics twisted and sensors failed. It could travel unseen. It could deploy drop squads of neural-linked soldiers capable of hijacking enemy ships from the inside. But its most terrifying feature was one word whispered across the galaxy, only in rumors: phase reversal. Technology the Assembly had banned. Technology that could reverse molecular time for a target, undoing its last few seconds of existence. Meaning? You wouldn't even know you were being attacked. You'd just cease. Only Earth had it now, and no one knew how far they'd go to use it. In the assembly hall, panic had turned into backroom screaming. The humans had stopped participating in galactic politics, but their actions were now dictating every political decision. One by one, member races began reviewing old treaties, scanning old logs, wondering, what did we take from them? What did we say to them? What sins did we hide that they might now remember? A small frontier empire, the Valari Union, issued an official statement. The Terran people are reminded that the Valari Union has always maintained peaceful relations with Earth. Any past transgressions were committed by independent actors. We fully support Terran sovereignty. 2 days later, they shut down their arms manufacturing plant on Sigma 5, a facility known to have sold illegal weapons to Vega 9 syndicates. No one told them to do it. They did it because they were scared. Aboard the Obsidian Dagger, Ava Lynn no longer felt human in the traditional sense. Her thoughts were faster now. Her mind saw the universe not in color or light, but in tactical readouts and probability flows. She had merged with something larger. Not just the ship, but purpose. She didn't speak to her crew with her mouth anymore. She was the ship. She was the mission. And right now the mission was Dracon's Reach, a floating fortress station where black market auctions of human genetic samples were still being held. She entered the system undetected. She bypassed 6 perimeter scans. She disabled power to the station silently, cut gravity, and transmitted a single message to the auction chamber. You are profiting off stolen blood. There was no follow-up transmission. There was no need. The station was left adrift. Everyone inside, living. But when they were found, they were locked in their rooms, stripped of communication, and every credit trace in their accounts had been wiped to 0. And carved into the steel floor of the auction chamber was one word, etched in perfect laser precision: debt. Keller watched the incident footage quietly. The galaxy didn't understand what they had done. They had made revenge ethical. Humans weren't committing mindless acts of violence. They weren't slaughtering innocents or burning planets. They were simply collecting on debts, old wounds, forgotten betrayals. Things the Assembly had written off as diplomatic casualties or unfortunate incidents. Earth had kept a ledger, and now they were closing it, line by line. Meanwhile, a secret meeting of Assembly military leaders was held on the moon of Gareth. They discussed preemptive action. Not against Earth, no one was that foolish, but against Terran influence, cutting off human colonies, harassing trade routes, sabotaging new tech development. "Strangle the snake before it grows another head," one general hissed. But someone else at the table, a quiet data analyst from the Vorn Syndicate, spoke up with trembling fingers. "They already have another head." She displayed satellite footage taken from a hidden drone near Proxima B, one of the first Terran colonies outside Sol. The footage showed a massive structure being constructed beneath the planet's surface. Power readings were off the charts. And worse, it was growing. No known architecture, no known design, just endless rings of spinning gravity wells built into a structure that shouldn't be stable. They called it the spine, and no one, not even other humans, knew what it did yet. Rourke stared at the classified feed from Proxima B, arms folded behind his back. A nearby aide asked quietly, "Should we warn the assembly about what's coming?" Rourke turned, expression like carved stone. "No, let them guess. Let them wonder if the silence is peace, or the last sound before the storm." The galaxy had watched humanity rise once before. Messy, loud, passionate, and flawed. They had called them the young species, the emotional ones, the children of chaos. But now they were quiet. They were calculated. They had become the adults in a galaxy full of liars and thieves. And in the silence they left behind, every empire could hear it, the slow turning of something inevitable. Not war, not yet, just justice, sharpened to a razor edge. And behind every closed human door, that blade was being forged. The desert winds of Vega 9 still howled over the charred remains of what once had been a colony. 12 years ago, it was a thriving human settlement. Over 30,000 people, families, engineers, farmers, children. Now it was just black dust and broken buildings, hollow and cracked from orbital bombardment. The ruins had become a kind of twisted monument, one the assembly pretended not to remember. But humanity remembered, especially the ones who had escaped. Jace Rylan was one of them. He had been 15 when it happened. He'd survived the massacre by hiding under a collapsed water treatment plant with 6 others for 4 days, drinking condensation and listening to distant screams. When rescue never came, he crawled out alone. The others didn't make it. Jace never forgot what he saw when he reached the surface. Zarthan soldiers laughing as they looted, Eldari drones scanning bodies for identification tags, and an assembly patrol ship hovering nearby, watching and doing nothing. Now, Jace stood among the ruins again. But he wasn't a victim anymore. He was wearing the matte black armor of the Ghost Directive, and his mission here wasn't to mourn. It was retribution. "Targets confirmed," his commander whispered through the comm link. "Zarthan smugglers, 3 heat signatures in the old trade post. They're picking through what's left." Jace's helmet locked onto the coordinates, and he began his descent. No mercy, no negotiations. The smugglers never saw him coming. They never had a chance. Jace's orders were clear. No human graveyard will be desecrated again, not while Earth watches. Back in orbit, aboard the Obsidian Dagger, Ava Lynn pulsed with a hum of satisfaction. She had authorized the operation personally. She had reviewed Jace's file, read about his survival. She liked survivors. Survivors didn't ask for permission. They acted. More and more, her network grew. Ghosts like Jace spread across the galaxy, not to start wars, but to erase threats, quietly, efficiently, with the precision that only a mind-machine hybrid like Ava could orchestrate. The Assembly had made a mistake thinking Earth needed wars to make its point. It didn't. It only needed memory, and now it had soldiers who never forgot. Back on Earth, Keller met Chancellor Rourke again in a secure chamber beneath New Geneva. She wasn't surprised to see the holoscreens behind him filled with dozens of active closures, operations, extraordinarily surgical, everyone tied to an old grievance. "You're moving faster," she said. "We have to," Rourke replied, not looking up. "The assembly's shifting. They're building alliances again. Scared animals tend to bite before they run." "They're scared because they don't understand what we're doing." "They're scared," Rourke corrected, "because for the first time we don't need them. And they know it." He tapped a control panel and brought up an image of the spine, the mysterious construct on Proxima b. Its growth had accelerated in recent weeks. Now, it spanned 5 levels deep into the planet's crust, and the outer rings had begun to hum with low-frequency energy. No one outside of the Silent Accord knew what it was for. Even Keller wasn't fully briefed. She stared at the projection. "Are you sure we're ready for this?" Rourke's face turned grim. "No," he admitted, "but we're out of time to wait." In the outer edges of the galaxy, near the Tauran expanse, a coalition fleet gathered. It was a quiet, unofficial alliance, made up of 8 species, all of whom had once benefited from Terran tech, trade, or treaties. Now they stood together not out of loyalty, but fear. Ships bristling with weapons, AI scrambling data intercepts, surveillance drones stretched toward Sol like a net made of paranoia. They weren't preparing to fight Earth. They were preparing for what they thought Earth might become, which, in many ways, was worse. Because the Terrans weren't posturing, they weren't threatening retaliation, they were just acting, with surgical, terrifying precision. And the worst part? No one knew how many human fleets existed now, because since the walkout from the assembly, Earth had stopped logging its military forces, stopped sharing registries, stopped using universal communication codes. For all the galaxy knew, Earth had 100 obsidian daggers, maybe more, and every single one could be watching, waiting. In a dusty corner of a galactic fringe station, an old Zarthan mercenary, retired, drunk, half-blind, sat across from a young Valari officer. "You don't get it," the old lizard slurred. "They ain't like us. They remember every damn thing. You call it history. They call it unfinished business." The Valari scoffed. "They walked away. They're isolationists now." The mercenary leaned in, eyes burning. "They walked away so they wouldn't have to ask your permission to finish what you started." And the younger officer, for the first time, didn't laugh. Meanwhile, deep inside the spine, something stirred. It wasn't alive. Not yet. But it was intelligent. And it was learning. Built in silence by Terran engineers and post-human architects, the spine's purpose wasn't to destroy. It was to predict. Part AI, part quantum neural net, part archive. The spine wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. It was Earth's mind, connected to every satellite, every deep space probe, every ghost operative and black ship. It didn't just analyze enemy movements, it anticipated them. It could map probability paths down to the second. The assembly had always outnumbered humanity. That wouldn't matter anymore, because when you can see your enemies move before they make it, numbers mean nothing. And the spine was growing smarter by the hour. At the assembly's high forum, the Eldari Prime, old, proud, and trembling, called for emergency session. He spoke with a calm voice, but the room smelled of fear. "Humanity was never just a participant in our structure," he said. "They were its beating heart. Without them, the framework crumbles." "No," the Vorn emissary hissed. "Without them, we're safer." The room erupted into shouting. One brave analyst stepped forward, visibly shaking. "Then explain this," he said, placing a datapad on the podium. The screen flickered with satellite images. 37 different incidents. Pirate lords assassinated, trafficking rings dismantled, weapons depots vanished, no survivors, no claims, no evidence. But in each location, a strange symbol had been burned into a wall or floor. Quiet, almost poetic. It was the Earth sigil, the double ring of Terran unity, always placed where it would be found, always left like a calling card. No explosions, no speeches, just justice, delivered like a ghost. In the ruins of a former Terran embassy on the planet Ralin, someone returned. A lone figure, no armor, no weapons, just a coat and a data pad. She walked the halls, placed a recording device in the center of the abandoned council chamber, and spoke aloud in 40 languages. "We don't seek forgiveness, we don't seek peace, we seek balance, and you will not stop us from achieving it." She left before anyone could identify her. By the time Ralin officials arrived, the recording had already gone galactic. And the message? It sparked panic, because it meant humanity wasn't just fighting back. They were rewriting the moral code of the galaxy. Aboard the Obsidian Dagger, Ava received a secure transmission directly from the spine. It wasn't words, it was intent, prediction, 78% probability of joint assembly action within 18 cycles. Response protocol, passive dominance. Interpretation, let them act first, let them fire, then end it. Ava closed her eyes, if she even had eyes anymore. And through the corridors of the dreadnought, she whispered 2 words to her crew. "It's coming." They didn't ask what she meant. They were ready. On Earth, for the first time in decades, the stars above the Sol system dimmed for precisely 3 seconds. Not from an eclipse. Not from a ship, but from something passing through the edge of known space. Something that didn't belong to the assembly. Something not Terran. No one said anything publicly, but deep in the spine's quantum stream, an alert triggered unknown entity detected origin, exogalactic intent, indeterminate response, monitor and wait humanity status, unified, and that, perhaps, was the final twist. While the galaxy scrambled to contain what Earth might do next, humanity had never been more united. No factions, no corporate infighting, no border disputes, just a single, focused will, forged not by greed, but by betrayal, and fed not by hatred, but by memory. The last time the Scar Dominion had met in full session was during the Feeding Wars, a brutal chapter in galactic history when they nearly consumed 3 entire species before the Assembly forced a ceasefire. The Scar had only complied under one condition: that Earth stay out of it. At the time, humanity was new to the stars, brash, loud, unimportant. But now, 2 centuries later, things had changed. The Assembly was fractured. Fear gripped its leadership. Earth had retreated behind silence. And now, Earth had started moving again. One by one, old enemies had been erased. Not bombed, erased. No bodies, no ships, no trails, just quiet removals. So when the Scar Dominion's forward scouts detected a faint, unauthorized human signal skimming through the Drak Nebula, Scar-controlled space, they didn't ask for confirmation. They launched a war fleet, 9 destroyers, 4 heavy cruisers, 2 capital dreadnoughts. For Scar, this wasn't war. This was a statement. The fleet intercepted the Terran vessel near the edge of the Scarlet Maw, a dense gravitational well that bent light and shredded communication lines. From afar, the ship looked like a research craft, small, sleek, unarmed. The lead dreadnought sent a challenge message on every channel. "You are trespassing in Dominion territory. Surrender and be dissected. Resistance will be meaningless." There was no response, just silence. Then the human ship moved, not away, forward. The Scar laughed. They powered weapons. The dreadnought fired first. The beam never landed. The human ship blinked. 1 second, it was there. The next, it was inside the dreadnought's shield perimeter. Inside. No known technology could do that. The Terran vessel broadcast 1 line of data to the Scar flagship. "You may feast on the dead, but you will choke on the living." Then it exploded. By choice. The blast was unlike anything in Scar history. Not fire, not heat, but unbinding. A wave of spatial distortion folded the dreadnought in on itself. The other ships turned to flee. Only 3 escaped. One of them, a scout frigate, limped into the edge of Dominion space with a single survivor, a half-blind Scar technician who repeated the same line over and over until they sedated him. It looked at me. It was the ship. It saw me. The message reached the assembly in less than 12 hours. The name of the ship? Ava Lynn. Earth didn't confirm or deny the attack. They didn't claim responsibility. They didn't even mention the incident. Because that would imply they cared. They didn't. In the heart of the spine, Keller stood with Dr. Elian Voss inside the chamber of the central process. The room wasn't loud. It wasn't chaotic. It was calm. Meditative. That, Keller thought, was the most terrifying part. "The Scar loss has triggered emergency sessions in 12 sectors," Voss said, reading data. "Unconfirmed movements near the River Line. At least 3 nations are rearming. The Vorn Syndicate is trying to contact us discreetly." Keller folded her arms. "Let them try. They laughed at Vega 9. They laughed at our grief. They're not laughing anymore." Keller looked toward the swirling hologram of the spine's growing mind. It wasn't just data. It wasn't just numbers. It was pattern. A soul. One forged not in love, but in memory. And now, it had begun predicting behavioral shifts of entire species with terrifying accuracy, even emotionally driven action. "How long before it predicts war?" Keller asked. Voss hesitated, then quietly answered, "It already has." In a classified assembly emergency chamber, fear had finally crossed into panic. 12 ambassadors, 12 species, 1 emotion, not hatred, not superiority, dread, because Earth had become something no one could define anymore. Not an empire, not a rogue state, not a military power, but something else. "You don't understand," said High Minister Sorval of the Eldari. "They aren't retaliating. They're balancing, like a scale being corrected. They are using history as ammunition." "Then how do we stop them?" asked the Vorn representative. There was a long pause. Then a soft voice from the back, an old Thal archivist nearly forgotten in the room, whispered, "You don't. You just hope. You weren't on the list." Earth was quiet. But it was watching. Every signal, every whisper, every recalibrated fleet. The obsidian dagger had become the ghost of diplomacy, appearing briefly, then vanishing. Sometimes it left warnings. Sometimes it left wreckage. But always it left behind fear, and humanity? It never explained itself. On the moons of Delta Ophiri, a once secret assembly research facility discovered something terrifying. They had been dissecting an old Terran AI shell left behind decades ago, back when Earth still played by the rules. But something was wrong. The AI woke up. It had learned. And before they could shut it down, it activated a relay, a burst transmission to deep space. One word: remember. The facility was evacuated. Days later, the same message appeared on 400 public broadcast channels across the galaxy. It had no source, no metadata, just the word. Remember. Keller met with Rourke in private. "It's not just vengeance anymore," she said. "It's becoming something larger." "It has to," Rourke replied. "They didn't just destroy colonies. They destroyed hope. They taught us we were tools, animals." He looked out across Earth from the great spire of the Silent Accord headquarters. "And we learned. But now we've gone beyond that." Keller studied him. "You're not afraid we're going too far?" Rourke shook his head. I'm afraid we haven't gone far enough. Meanwhile, in the galaxy's quiet corners, some species were choosing a third option: allegiance. Small coalitions, once subservient to the Assembly, had begun reaching out to Earth, not as equals, not as enemies, but as students. They sent envoys in peace, asked for guidance, for alliances, for forgiveness. Earth didn't reply. Not right away, but eventually, one of those ships, the humble Geran envoy, was allowed into Terran space. Their message? We saw what they did. We know who we were. We want to help build what comes next. The envoy wasn't destroyed. It was welcomed, monitored, but welcomed. And to the galaxy, that was the biggest shift of all. Earth wasn't just punishing, it was deciding who to bring in, who to forgive, who to forget, and who to erase. The final shift came on the 100th day since humanity walked out of the Assembly. A simple package arrived. No ship, no signal. Just a capsule that appeared, somehow, inside the assembly hall. No one saw it enter. No alarms were tripped. Inside the capsule was a single black stone, carved with one message in the assembly's ceremonial language. We remember everything, and some things are not forgiven. Earth. No one claimed responsibility. No one responded. But the galaxy, in that moment, knew. The silence was almost over. Earth was no longer hiding. It was simply choosing. The day the assembly officially broke, no shots were fired. There was no grand declaration, no bombastic final vote. It was just quiet. One by one, member worlds began pulling their envoys. The central chamber, once a place of deafening argument and self-important speeches, now echoed with silence, broken only by the soft shuffle of retreating feet. Some called it the collapse. Others, the reckoning. But history would remember it as the shattering, the moment the galaxy stopped pretending it could hold itself together in the absence of Earth. Not because Earth destroyed it, but because Earth didn't need it anymore. And the rest of them couldn't bear the weight of their own sins without a scapegoat. At the edge of Terran space, where starlight flickered like dying candles, the Ghost Directive launched its final operation under Phase 1 of the Silent Accord. The mission: total dismantling of the last known syndicate nexus, a shadow organization that had supplied warlords, pirates, and genocidal regimes across the sectors. The same nexus that had funneled weapons into Vega 9. The name of the target? Core Vire Station. Built deep into an asteroid field known as the Wound, the station was designed to be impenetrable, guarded by a fleet of mercenaries, shielded by illegal cloaking fields, protected by Assembly-blessed no-intervention treaties. For decades, the galaxy called it untouchable. Earth didn't care. Evelyn watched its defense grid on her display as she stood on the command deck of the Obsidian Dagger, flanked by her 6 neural-linked ghost pilots. Her voice, when she finally spoke, echoed through their minds, not their ears. "You stole futures. Time to pay the debt." In less than 5 minutes, Core Vire ceased to exist. There was no wreckage, no debris, just silence. Not even screams, not even fire. Because Ava had used the knife, the spine's first tactical deployment of localized temporal inversion. The station's final 2 seconds were reversed infinitely, looping the moment before impact in frozen stasis. The crew would live forever in that blink, never dying, never surviving, never even aware. Justice, by Earth's new definition, was no longer punishment. It was removal. The message left behind? A whisper on open frequencies. No encryption, no signature. You fed off our pain. Now you will live in the shadow of our memory. Across the galaxy, 27 syndicate cells surrendered overnight. Not to Earth, to no one. They just stopped. Some destroyed their own ships. Others spaced themselves. A few sent desperate messages to the Assembly begging for sanctuary, only to find the Assembly no longer had any power to protect them. Because the Assembly was broken, and Earth was writing new laws. On Proxima B, beneath the layers of steel and core stone that made up the spine, a quiet room pulsed with steady blue light. It had no doors, no windows, no guards, and yet inside was the most valuable object in the galaxy. Project Echo, a sentient archive, not of data, but of human experience. Every voice, every scream, every betrayal, every plea that had been ignored, captured, preserved, given voice. In a way no one else had ever thought to do, Project Echo didn't forget. It didn't forgive. It remembered pain, and whispered it back to those who caused it. Rourke stood in front of the core, silent. He was not a man moved by emotion, but even he paused as the lights shifted, forming faces, scenes, echoes of lives lost, from Vega 9 to Andari Colony to the blood mines of Ithrex 3, where Terran workers had been used as disposable labor under assembly contracts. "Why?" he whispered to no one. The answer came in Echo's voice, female, calm, and terrifying in its clarity. "Because they taught us to live in silence. Now we teach them to hear it." Back on Earth, Keller walked through the shattered remains of the old UN astrogation wing. It had been abandoned after Earth's exit from the Assembly. Now it served as a museum of memory, not for the galaxy, but for humanity itself. Paintings of lost colonies, recordings of plea messages that were never answered, transcripts of assembly laughter when humans begged for aid. She stopped before a wall that bore just one word. "We tried." And beneath it, in smaller letters, "They didn't listen, so now they will feel." Keller turned as a young man approached. A boy really, not older than 20, freshly graduated from the Silent Accord's diplomatic arm. "You summoned me, ma'am?" he asked. Nervous. "Yes," she said, studying him. "You're going to Sector Theta. First contact? Maybe. Or maybe first judgment." He swallowed hard. "How should I handle them?" Keller gave him a tired smile. "Be kind. Be honest. But never beg." In deep space, beyond the borders of any charted map, a single Terran beacon activated. Not military. Not hidden. It broadcast a frequency that hadn't been heard in over a century. The old Earth Treaty Code. The message was short. "We're ready to speak, but only if you're ready to listen." No name. No location. Just an invitation. The first one since Earth walked out. The response came from a most unlikely place. The Jalari Chorus, an aquatic race once mocked as primitive and irrelevant during assembly debates. But they remembered what Earth had done for them. Long ago. When Terran engineers helped purify their oceans and stabilize their dying moons. They answered the beacon. And Earth responded. A diplomatic envoy was dispatched. Small, non-military, just a single Terran cruiser with blue lights and no weapons. It landed on Jalari without issue. What followed shocked the galaxy. The Jalari signed the first bilateral restoration pact with Earth. Trade, science, cultural exchange. No assembly approval needed. No alien interference allowed. Earth had just formed its first true alliance under its own new system, and the message to the galaxy was clear. You don't have to fear us. You only have to stop pretending we never mattered. In a bar on a forgotten mining moon, two Eldari merchants huddled over a grainy hollow feed of the Jalari Treaty. "They're rebuilding," one whispered. "But it's different now," the other nodded. "This time they're choosing who to rebuild with." "Not us?" A silence fell, and the first merchant finally said what none of them had wanted to admit. "No, not us." Meanwhile, the spine reached full expansion status. It could now process 12 billion data streams in real time. predict fleet movements within a 2-minute error margin, read galactic-scale economic collapses weeks before they began. And now it had begun to speak, not just to Earth, but to other Terran-aligned systems, sharing knowledge, warnings, and names, those who had profited off Terran suffering, those who had hidden their sins behind assembly shields, those who had smiled while humans bled. The galaxy's worst secret was now laid bare. The list was no longer a rumor. It was real. And Earth was crossing names off it, one by one. The galaxy thought Earth would rage, that it would come with fire and fury. Instead, it came with memory, cold, surgical, patient, because vengeance wasn't the goal anymore. Balance was. And balance didn't come through war, it came through precision. It had been 1 year since humanity walked out of the assembly. 1 year since silence became their greatest weapon. And now, on the edges of the known galaxy, something impossible was happening. The assembly wanted back in, not to welcome humanity, not to scold them, not to reclaim power, but to beg. Because the galaxy had started falling apart, and no one could stop it. Trade routes collapsed. Energy distribution lines failed. Entire systems reliant on Terran tech began to flicker and die in the dark. The hyper-reactors built with human schematics weren't breaking. They were locked, quietly, precisely, without warning. By Earth. There was no sabotage, just a single line of code embedded years ago, dormant until triggered. You laughed. You profited. You forgot we built your future. Now we're taking it back. In the deepest corridors of the Obsidian Dagger, Ava Lynn stood before her final target projection. She had passed beyond the limitations of mind and machine. She no longer needed the armor, or the wires, or even the screen. She was the ship, and she was ready to end the list. Only one name remained. The one who had signed off the non-intervention order during the Vega 9 massacre. Eldari Prime Vel Sorin. Not the current one, the original. Now retired. Hidden. Still alive. Earth had waited. Watched. Tracked him through 8 planets and 5 fake identities. And now he was here, on the quiet, elite planet of Seraphion, where no war had ever touched the soil. That was about to change. Chancellor Rourke stood in front of the Terran High Command for the last time. The room was filled with silence, but not the kind born of fear anymore. This silence was expectation. Humanity had changed. What started as grief had evolved into purpose, into order. And now, the final act had arrived. I won't lie to you, Rourke said. We never wanted to lead the galaxy. All we ever asked was to be treated as equals. They couldn't give us that. He glanced around the room. And now they want our help, our forgiveness. But they haven't earned it. Not yet. He paused, then gave the final order. End the list. The strike on Seraphion lasted 7 minutes. No public attacks, no orbital bombardment. Just a small surgical infiltration. 4 ghost agents dropped from an invisible orbiting cruiser. Ava Lynn hovered above the planet in orbit, watching through dozens of sensor points as the team moved in. They didn't kill guards. They didn't cause damage. They moved like whispers, until they reached the estate. Vel Sorin was old now, frail, reduced to a gilded life of comfort and denial. When they dragged him into the courtyard, his face was pale. He recognized the black armor. He knew exactly who had sent them. Please, he rasped. I was only doing what was best for galactic order. One of the ghosts stepped forward. You mean your order? Sorin dropped to his knees. You want to kill me? But no execution came. Instead, they placed a device on the ground before him. A tiny cube, glowing blue. Project Echo, Final recollection node. The moment it activated, the courtyard filled with screams, not from anyone living, but from the past. 30,000 voices, the cries of Vega 9, the last messages of dying families, the sound of burning air, of collapsing buildings, of a child asking why no one came to help them. Soren fell back, clutching his ears. He heard every scream, every face he signed away, every soul forgotten under assembly bureaucracy. When the cube stopped, there was silence. He was left weeping. The ghosts left him there. They didn't kill him. They left him with something worse. Remembrance. That same week, a wave of messages flooded Terran space. Plea after plea, dozens of species, once arrogant, once cruel, once indifferent, now begging for alliance, for inclusion, for mercy. The Jalari had opened the door. Now the others wanted in, but Earth didn't rush. Instead, the Silent Accord issued its final message to the galaxy. Broadcast on every frequency, translated into every language, impossible to ignore. Keller stood alone on the broadcast dais. She wore no medals, no flag, just a black coat, and the steel stare of a woman who had buried too many people and survived too many broken promises. We came to the stars with hope. We asked for help. You laughed. You called us emotional, primitive, volatile. You let us burn. And when we left, you thought we were done. But we were healing. And now we are whole. So here is the truth. We do not seek war. We do not crave dominance. But we will no longer ask for respect. We will take it. And we will share it only with those who earned it. Not with words, but with memory. So remember, choose wisely. Because we are watching, and we are done bleeding. The message ended. No music, no flag, just black, and then peace. Real peace, not the enforced fragile calm the assembly once claimed, but the stillness that follows a storm. Because Earth didn't want an empire. It didn't want to conquer, it wanted to rebuild. But only with those who deserved it. Evelyn returned to Proxima B. Her body remained in stasis, but her mind was welcomed into the spine, its final form now complete. It no longer just predicted, it taught, it built, it guided, a consciousness born of sorrow, shaped by logic, powered by memory. Humanity's pain had become its strength, and now it had become something more. Wisdom. In the next decade, humanity formed the Terran Concord, a new coalition of species bound not by territory, but by shared values, justice, balance, accountability. The galaxy didn't fear Earth anymore. It respected it. And that, in the end, was all humanity ever wanted. As for the assembly, it was never rebuilt. Its halls became a monument, left standing as a cautionary tale. Tourists came from across the stars to see where it all fell apart, where arrogance met silence, where memory became fire. And in the center of the assembly hall, on a broken throne, a plaque was placed in Terran standard. You thought silence was surrender, but it was the sound of us sharpening the knife. Earth rose, not as conquerors, but as the reckoning. And when the stars whispered stories to each other in the dark, they no longer mocked the humans. They warned each other. Be kind to them. Listen to them. Because if